goes on inside. Equally so, it isn't that what goes on inside is so strong that it often succeeds in pulling around what goes on outside. It is very simply the two processes, the two behaviors are one. What you do is what the universe does. And what the universe does is also what you do. Not you in the sense of your superficial ego, which is a very small, little tiny area of your consciousness. But you in the sense of your total psychophysical organism, conscious as well as unconscious. This is not something that arrived in the world from somewhere else altogether, that confronts an alien.
Bro, come on.
You are is the universe. In fact, the works, what there is, and always has been, and always will be forever and ever, performing an act called John Doe. And this is such a subversion of common sense. But is in fact, matter of fact, something, if you stop to think about it, that is completely obvious.
I don't know how to do this, guys. I'm trying. My camera kind of fell, so I'm trying to just get this back. Oh. Still new at this. Give me a sec.
Only everything conspires to prevent you from seeing that obvious thing. Because when you were babies, practically, all your parents and your teachers and your aunts, uncles, and your older brothers and sisters got together and they told you who you were.
Hello, how's it going?
As
I'm probably going to say your name wrong, but Amisa Day?
Don't you come on too
Nicholas?
strong, Johnny, because,
Come on.
no, you've got elders and betters around here.
I already know if that
But
keeps
you're
right.
responsible. You're a free agent. You'd better be.
So,
And so, when you are told from childhood that you are expected, commanded, to behave in a way that will be acceptable only if you do it voluntarily, you
alright,
remain
let's try
permanently
this
mixed
again.
up. That, if anything, is permanent brain damage. So, but that's the idea, you see, because that's the game we're playing.
How's everyone's day going?
I did. See? That's the game we're playing.
Saturday 20, that's something, yes.
of the Hindu way of life, I call it that rather than a religion, is in Sanskrit tattvamasi.
It's like I'm still doing this or something.
Put it in a kind of colloquial way. You're it.
Better.
And it is the which than which there is no witcher, which they call the Brahman, or the Atman with a capital A, meaning the self. You are only just kidding that you're just poor little me. See, the function of a guru, that is to say a spiritual teacher in India, is to give you a funny look in the eye. Because he sees in you the Brahman, the Godhead, just claiming it's poor little me. And he's going to eventually, by all sorts of subtle techniques that are called in Sanskrit upaya,
hello,
that in
Purple
politics means
Panda. How's it going
chicanery,
today?
and in spiritual education,
I do some 4x4
he's
and
going to
5x5
try and get
later.
you back
I will
into
have to
realizing
rewind the
who you
parody
really
on this
are.
one. Right now I'm still averaging about 13 seconds or so. I like to get that under 10 seconds if I can. And thank you, Purple Panda. I've been doing this for a few years now, so I still have a while to go, but I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Gotta get my transitions better. Hello, Jordan. I got my cubes from the Speed Cube shop over here in Las Vegas.
That's why he gives you a funny look.
A lot of my like random fun ones I have,
right through you.
like shape mods and stuff. I did
Chico.
originally get at the Cubicle, and then I've also gotten some at Speed
You're
Cube shop
coming
as well.
on beautifully in this act. But then
Right
you're
now I'm
somebody else
using the
altogether.
Waylon V11,
And I
believe.
congratulate you.
And I
You're
have
doing a wonderful
Trail
job.
4 V2 over here.
Playing this part, which you call the person. My person. You know, a person is a fake. The word means a mask. So if you read books on how to be a real person, you're reading books on how to be a genuine fake. The word persona, as you know, means a mask worn in Greco-Roman drama.
10:59.
So if you eyes come on to the guru and say,
I saw
well,
X
he
cross
asks
with
you
that
who you
in
are,
the back.
Sri Ramana Maharshi, when anybody came to him and they said to him, as people do, who was I in my last incarnation? Or will I be reincarnated again? He always replied, who's asking the question?
I don't see X crosses often, but when I do, I'm always gonna try them. Nope, wrong way. Still mess up video sometimes. And I can't always get my finger to do this way. Where are you guys from? Let me know in the chat.
And everybody was irritated because he wouldn't give them answers about what they were in their former lives. He said, who are you? And he looked at you. Have you looked at photographs of this man? I keep a photograph of him close by because of the humor in his eyes. They're looking at you with a dancing twinkle.
Hello again, Purple Panda. Where are you from?
Now then, in
over
these
here in the
Asiatic
USA.
traditions, it is well recognized that people who get the knowledge that you're it may very well run amok. And therefore they always couple any method
I actually just
of gaining
moved away
this,
from
whether
these
it is
ghosts.
yoga, whether it is smoking something or drinking something or whatever is the method. they always couple it with a discipline. Now, I know the word discipline isn't very popular these days. And I would like to have a new word for it. I would prefer to use the word skill.
Hard time recognizing that one.
Discipline is a way of expression. Say you want to express your feelings in stone. Now, stone doesn't give way very easily. Tough stuff. So you have to learn the skill or the discipline of the sculptor in order to express yourself in stone. So in every other way, whatever you do, you require a skill. And it's enormously important, especially for American people, to understand that there is absolutely no possibility of having any pleasure in life at all without skill. Money doesn't buy pleasure. Ever. Look, if you want to get stone drunk and go out and get a bottle of bourbon and down it, you can't do that except for people who have practiced the distiller's art. You can't even make love without art. Where I live in Sausalito, we have a harbor full of ever so many pleasure craft. Motor cruisers, sailing boats, all kinds of things. And they never leave the dock. All that happens with them is their owners have cocktail parties there on Saturdays and Sundays. Because they discovered, having bought these things, that the discipline of sailing is difficult to learn, takes a lot of time. And they didn't have time for it, so they just bought the things as status symbols. So, in other words, you can't have pleasure in life without skill. But it isn't an unpleasant task to learn a skill. If the teacher, in the first place, gets you fascinated. There is immense pleasure in learning how to do anything skillfully. To make carpentry things, to cook, to write, to calculate, anything you want can be immensely pleasurable to learn the discipline. And it is completely indispensable. Because look, you may be a very inspired musician. I'm not a musical technologist, you see, and I regret it, but I'm a word technologist. But I can hear in my head all kinds of symphonies and all kinds
I do and I don't. I don't really
compositions,
collect them
but I don't
as
have
much
the
anymore,
technique to write them
trading
down on
cards.
paper and share them with somebody else.
But I did at one point play
Maybe next
Magic
time
the
around.
Gathering for a bit. I still have those cards, so I don't really play them all that much anymore.
But you see,
And then, you
so
know,
far as
Pokemon
words are
scalping is
concerned,
kind
I can
of ruined
express
that
ideas
one
because I
for
have
me at
studied
least.
language. And I work very hard. Not that I didn't like it, I intensely enjoy the work of writing a book, although it is difficult. But it's fascinating. To say what can never possibly be said. So,
I still love the Pokemon games.
you see what's happening. What
Like,
you have to do, you have
been
inspiration.
recently playing Fire Red again.
Then you have to
My
have
favorite
technique
game, one of my
to
originals.
incarnate, to express your
And then
inspiration.
there's just a couple of the mainline games I don't
That is to
like.
say, to bring
I'm excited for Winds and
down
Waves, but I don't have a Switch 2, so I don't
to
think I'm
express
really going to
heaven
be
in
playing that
terms
one.
of earth. Of course, they are really
One-
one.
Do you play a specific position in basketball? Or do you just like to watch it or something?
But we are so much there that we're like fish in water. They don't know they're in water. Like the birds don't know they're in the air because it's all around them. In the same way, we don't know what the color of our eyes is. I don't mean whether you've got blue or brown eyes, but the color of the lens of your eye. You call that transparent. No color.
Thank you.
See, because you can't see it. But it's basic to being able to see it. So in order to find out where you are, there has to be some way of drawing attention to it.
How's everyone stay going? Man, I have
That
such a
involves
monotone
skill.
voice, I cannot help this.
Upaya in Sanskrit. Skillful means. So, it's all very well. Anybody can have ecstasy. Anybody, as a matter of fact, can become aware that he is one with the eternal ground of the universe.
Over here, have a good time. Good day. Let me know if you guys, want to see anything different. Want to see me do a different cube, want to see me do one-handed.
Very, very high on LSD,
I don't like table abuse, so I do it in the air.
And you saw the beatific vision, which is of course the case, because wherever you look, if your eyes are open, you will see the face of the divine. Then you come out of your ecstasy with the dirty ashtray and say to everybody, here it is.
1166.
No. There is a possibility. If you are an extraordinarily skillful painter, or even photographer,
What are you guys all up to
of
today?
presenting the dirty ashtray so that everybody else will see almost what you saw. But you will have to have a technique which will translate every grain of ash into a jewel. Because that's what you actually saw. But that requires mastery of an art.
Can you guys see the time when I type it? I don't actually know if you guys can see that or not. Am I typing too fast?
I'm afraid people think that all it's necessary to do is just throw out any old thing, because under that transformed state of consciousness, any old thing is the works. But nobody else can see it if they haven't shared that point of view. So then, this becomes for us in the United States an extremely important social problem. We are living in a scientific world where secrets cannot be kept. And anyone, anytime, can pick up something which will short-circuit all the ancient religious techniques, yoga practice, meditation, etc., etc. This is all very embarrassing. But it will happen. And they will see what all those sages and Buddhas saw in ancient times. And it will be very clear.
That's the only reason I go so 15. I'm just singing random things, random things.
To be liberated is to be able to see human life in the same way as you see all other life. And to do that, you have to be able to live, as it were, on two levels. The level of involvement and the level of detachment. Cultivating the level of detachment is something that is done through the mysterious human property of self-consciousness. Be able to know that you know, feel that you feel. And by possessing that faculty, which is self-consciousness, is being able to reflect upon one's own life, we are able to become, as it were, to go to a level at which our own life is seen in its total context in the universe. That is to say, to realize that yourself is not your ego, which is the standpoint at which you are involved in your game, taking sides. But yourself is the eternal, immeasurable reality that is what there is.
Hello. How's it going today? I just don't know how to talk to people.
Only the difficulty here is that this capacity of self-consciousness, although it is that which enables us to awaken, is also capable of getting us into perfectly frightful messes. Into all kinds of what must be called feedback snarls, where you know that you know. You can think about thinking. And the moment you can think about thinking, you can think whether your thinking was right or not. Did it come off? Did I do the right thinking?
Oh, come on.
Then you start to worry. Then you start to worry about the kind of thinking you are doing about thinking. And so builds up our peculiar human anxiety. When these creatures that are not self-conscious behave, they behave spontaneously. They just go zoom, zowie, and do what they have to do. And so if it doesn't work, they die. But they don't worry about it in advance. That's that. Magnificent. See? And human beings have a faint memory, kind of arcane, sort of collective unconscious Jungian style feeling that there was a time when we didn't have to worry. When we could never be neurotic. And a great deal of religion, you see, is an attempt to regain the golden age.
Will you stop checking? C-O-L-L. Just a weird guy.
So you see, in this way, the human being comes to reflect upon himself and begins to see that there's something
Just
wrong.
a weird guy.
Now there isn't.
Doing a weird guy thing.
But it's right that he should feel that something is wrong, because it is through this that his capacity for self-knowledge and self-consciousness
That was
develops.
actually quite nice.
So you see, there is the sense that somehow or other at some time there was a fall, a point at which we became unnatural. There's a great deal of worry going on about this now because of the rise of the computer, and a new form of intelligence, you see, is coming to the world.
That's the thing. Gotta know what I'm doing in order to do it.
And people are beginning to worry like anything about whether the machines are going to take
I
over.
just randomly made it up.
But we've got to realize that machines aren't... See, machine is becoming a dirty word. Just a machine. Mere machinery. But actually, there has grown out of us, through these things, enormous electronic circuits that are new forms of life. And these are all connected with us. They're not separate from us. They're not something like a different order of beings that might come from some other planet and conquer us.
It's just fun.
The whole development of the electronic minds, brains that we have are new cortex. The cortex overlaps the original central brain. And as it were, when you play this game, you know, putting hands over hands over hands, children like to play, it's a game called capping. The cortex caps the central brain that is more like the brain of an animal and enables us to reflect on it. Now, all this machinery that we are making is an extension of our brain. It is a new kind of life.
For the bad.
But it worries us. And when we start to do that, we get the feeling something is going wrong. There has been a mistake. And exactly the same sensation, you see, is anciently connected with the development of self-consciousness in the cortex. Every time we get that feeling, it means that we've taken a new step in controlling it. Instead of relaxing and letting our wings fly us like a moth or a bird, we now have these jet planes where we have an elaborate system of anxious people, morning, noon, and night, checking it that those things go right.
I'm just a weird guy, a hippie
now then,
guy.
To take this a step further,
no idea what I'm doing here.
We are all amazingly involved in the process of being human and playing our game and taking our side. And therefore, our victories and defeats, our sicknesses and our health, are things we get mighty partisan from. And therefore, we cannot see that human behavior is just like everything else. It never makes a mistake. ever making a mistake must include the feeling that mistakes can be made. That's where this point of view would differ somewhat from the point of view of the Christian Scientist.
All right.
Strives manfully in a way to assert that evil is purely illusory, but doesn't quite grasp the point that the illusion of there being something evil is important and good too.
Yeah, okay.
You couldn't have really any form of life without the others going on too. There have to be friends and there have to be enemies. Because if there aren't enemies, the friends get too prosperous. And they kill themselves by their excess of exuberance. So they're constantly being pruned.
Minus 20. Oh, two cubes. I don't know why I did that. That was fun.
Some people will use a symbolism of the relationship of God to the universe, wherein God is, say, brilliant light, only somehow veiled, hiding underneath all these forms that you see as you look around you. So far, so good. But the truth is funnier than that. It is that you are looking right at the brilliant light now. That the experience you are having, which you call ordinary everyday consciousness, pretending you're not it, that experience is exactly the same thing as it. There's no difference at all. And when you find that out, laugh yourself silly. That's the great discovery. When you really start to see things, and you look at an old paper cup, and you go into the nature of what it is to see, you realize that that vision of the paper cup is the brilliant light of the cosmos. See, the source of all light is in the eye. If there were no eyes in this world, the sun would not be light.
Alright.
You evoke light out of the universe. In the same way, you, by virtue of having a soft skin, evoke hardness out of wood. Wood is only hard in relation to a soft skin. It's your eardrum that evokes noise out of the air. You, by being this organism, call into being the whole universe of light and color and hardness and heaviness and everything. See? But in the mythology that we've sold ourselves on during the end of the 19th century, when people discovered how big the universe was, and that we live on a little planet in a solar system on the edge of a galaxy, which is a minor galaxy, everybody thought, we're really unimportant after all. God isn't there, doesn't love us. Nature doesn't give a damn. And we put ourselves down. See? But actually, this little funny microbe, tiny thing, crawling on this little planet, way out somewhere, who has the ingenuity, by nature of this magnificent organic structure, to evoke the whole universe out of what would otherwise be mere quanta. There's jazz going on.
This one doesn't count.
But you see, this little ingenious organism is not merely some stranger in this. This little organism on this little planet is what the whole show is growing there, and so realizing its own presence.
Came back for it.
Now, here's the problem. If this is the state of affairs, which is so, and if the consciousness state you're in at this moment is the same thing as what we might call the divine state, if you do anything to make it different, it shows you don't understand that it's so. So the moment you start practicing yoga, or praying, or meditating, or indulging in some sort of spiritual cultivation, you are getting in your own way. The Buddha said, we suffer because we desire. If you could give up desire, you won't suffer. But he didn't say that as the last word. He said that as the opening step of the dialogue. Because if you say that to someone, they're going to come back after a while and say, yes, but I'm now desiring not to desire. And so the Buddha will answer, well, at last we're beginning to understand the point. Because you can't give up desire. Why would you try? It's already desired. So in the same way, you say, you ought to be unselfish. You give up your ego. Let go, relax. Why do you want to do that? Just because it's another way of beating the game, isn't it? The moment you see you hypothesize that you are different from the universe, you want to get one up. But if you try to get one up on the universe, and you're in competition with it, it means you don't understand you are it. You think there's a real difference between self and other. That self, what you call yourself and what you call other, are mutually necessary to each other, like back and front. They're really one. But just as a magnet polarizes itself in north and south, but it's all one magnet, so experience polarizes itself and other. But it's all one. So if you try to make the North Pole get the mastery of it, or the South Pole get the mastery of the North Pole, you show you don't know what's going on. A guru or teacher who wants to get this across to somebody because he knows it himself. And when you know it, you know, you like others to see it too. So what he does is he gets you into being ridiculous harder and more assiduously than usual. In other words, if you are in a contest with the universe, he's going to stir up that contest until it becomes ridiculous. So he sets you such tasks as saying, now of course, in order to be a true person, you must give up yourself. Be unselfish. So the Lord steps down out of heaven and says, first great commandment is, thou shalt love the Lord thy God.
It's worked out.
You must love me. Well, that's a double burden. You can't love on purpose. You can't be sincere purposely. It's like trying not to think of a green elephant while taking medicine. But if a person really tries to do it, so, you know, this is the way Christianity is rigged. You should be very sorry for your sins. Though everybody knows they're not. But they think they ought to be. So they go around trying to be penitent. Or trying to be humble. And they know the more assiduously they practice it, the phonier and phonier the whole thing gets. If you think you have a problem, you see, that you're an ego and that you're indifferent, the answer that the Zen master makes to you is show me your ego. I want to see this thing that has a problem. When Bodhidharma, the legendary founder of Zen, came to China, a disciple came to him and said, I have no peace of mind. Please pacify my mind. Bodhidharma said, bring out your mind here before me and I'll pacify it. Well, he said, when I look for it, I can't find it. So Bodhidharma said, there, it's pacified. See, because when you look for your own mind, that is to say, your own particularized center of being, which is separate from everything else, you won't be able to find it. But the only way you'll know it isn't there is if you look for it hard enough to find out that it isn't there. So everybody says, all right, know yourself, look within, find out who you are. But the harder you look, you won't be able to find it. Then you'll realize that it isn't there at all. There isn't a separate you. Your mind is what there is. Everything. I was talking a great deal yesterday afternoon about the Buddhist attitude to change, to death, to the transience of the world, and showing that preachers of all kinds stir people up in the beginning by alarming them about change. That's like somebody actually raising an alarm, just in the same way as if I want to pay you a visit, I ring the doorbell. And then we can come in and I don't need to raise an alarm anymore. So in the same way, it sounds terrible, you see, that everything is going to die and pass away, and here you are, thinking that happiness, sanity, and security consist in clinging to things which can't be clung to, and occasionally the body changes. The whole thing is a weaving of smoke.
Much hesitation.
So, that's the initial standpoint. But, as soon as you really discover this, and you stop clinging to change, then everything is quite different. It becomes amazing. Not only do all your senses become more wide awake, not only do you feel almost as you're walking on air, but you see finally that there is no duality, no difference between the ordinary world and the nirvana world. They're the same world, but what makes it is the point of view. And of course, if you keep identifying yourself with some sort of stable entity that sits and watches the world go by, you don't acknowledge your union, your inseparability from everything else that there is. You go by with all the rest of the things. But if you insist on trying to take a permanent stand, on trying to be a permanent witness of the flux, then it grates against you, and you feel very uncomfortable. But it is a fundamental feeling in most of us that we are such witnesses.
992.
We feel that behind the stream of our thoughts, of our feelings, and our experiences, there is something which is the thinker, the feeler, and the experiencer. Not recognizing that that is itself a thought, feeling, or experience, and it belongs within and not outside the changing panorama of experience. It's what you call a Q signal. In other words, when you telephone and your telephone conversation is being tape recorded, it's the law that there shall be a beep every so many seconds. And that beep cues you in to the fact that this conversation is recorded. So in a very similar way, in our everyday experience, there's a beep which tells us this is a continuous experience which is mine.
There's a 992, about 5 frames per second.
In the same way, for example, it's a cue signal.
Trying to get my average
When
under
the
10 seconds.
composer arranges some music and he keeps in it a recurrent theme. He makes many variations on it. Or more subtle still, he keeps within it a consistent style. So you know that it's Mozart all the way along, because it sounds like Mozart.
11:57. Hey, don't put average. Average is about 13 seconds an hour.
But there isn't, as it were, a constant noise going all the way through, tell you it's continuous, although in Hindu music they do have something called the drone. There is behind all the drums and every kind of singing something that goes
11:18. Yes.
and it always sounds the note which is the tonic of the scale being used.
So far is a 1042.
But in Hindu music, that drone represents the eternal self, the Brahman,
That is very
behind all
different.
the changing forms of nature. But that's only a symbol.
Can't see anything. Yeah. 1287.
to find out what is eternal, you can't make an image of it, you can't hold on to it. And so it's psychologically more conducive to liberation to remember the thinker or the feeler or the experiencer and the experiences are all together, they're all one. But if out of anxiety you try to stabilize, keep permanent the separate observer, you are in for conflict.
$12.85.
Here is the point. If you believe, if you have certain propositions that you want to assert about the ultimate reality, or what Paul Tillich calls the ultimate ground of being,
I was doing so well for a minute.
you're talking nonsense. Because you can't say something specific about everything. You see, supposing you wanted to say God has a shape. But if God is all that there is, then God doesn't have any outside, so he can't have a shape. You have to have an outside and space outside it to have a shape.
Drink your water.
That's why the Hebrews, too, are against people making images of God. But nonetheless, Jews and Christians persistently make images of God, not necessarily pictures and statues, but they make images in their minds. And those are much more insidious. Buddhism is not saying that the self, capital S, great outcomes or whatnot. It isn't denying that the experience that corresponds to these words is realized. What it is saying is that if you make conceptions and doctrines about these things, you're liable to become attached.
I'm just like, I average 13.
You're liable to start believing instead of knowing.
But I'm not using the timer.
So they say in Zen Buddhism, the doctrine of Buddhism is a finger pointing at the moon. Do not mistake the finger. Or so we might say in the West, the idea of God is a finger pointing at God. But what most people do is, instead of following the finger, they suck it to the tongue. And so Buddha chopped off the finger. And undermine all metaphysical beliefs. There are many, many dialogues in the Pali scriptures where people try to corner Buddha into a metaphysical position. Is the world eternal?
Try it again.
Buddha says nothing. Is the world not eternal? And he answers nothing. Is the world both eternal and not eternal? He don't say nothing. Is the world neither eternal nor not eternal? Still he don't say nothing. He maintains what is called the noble silence.
Just right there. One line difference. Sometimes later called the power of silence. Because this silence, this metaphysical silence, is not a void. It is very powerful. The silence is the open window through which you can see, not concepts, not ideas, not beliefs, but the very goods.
But if you say what it is that you see, you will misdirect it. It's better to destroy people's
I
beliefs.
saw the subtitle as
I know it hurts,
timer.
but it is the way. That is what cracks the eggshell and lets out the chick. Of course, if you want to stay in the eggshell, you can, but you can have it. This, then, you see, is why Buddhism is in dialogue form. The truth cannot be told. It can be suggested, it can be indicated. And a method of interchange between teacher and student can be arranged whereby the teacher constantly pricks the student's bubbles. And that's what it's all about. And because that's the way it is, we find that in the course of history,
just gotta let the cube solve itself.
Buddhism
Everything
keeps changing.
flow.
It develops, it grows. As people make all these explorations that the original Buddha suggested, they find out all kinds of new things. They explore the mind. They find out all the tricks of the mind. They find out ever so many things. And they begin to teach these things. Talk about them. And some people influenced by modern nature, influenced by Protestants, say, let's go back to the simple original teachings of the Buddha. Let's get back to the simple teachings. Nobody could read the New Testament with a clean mind.
I just don't
Today.
say so much.
Because whenever you look at the Bible, don't you hear some preacher's voice in your childhood reading those words? Hasn't your culture taught you to interpret these words in certain ways? You can't get that. And nobody can get back to Buddha. You can only go on to Buddha.
Excuse me. Still got 13.
So that's why in Zen they just burn the books up. I mean, occasionally. Because to burn up books, you've got to have some books to burn up. But when, you can say that the teaching of the founder is the thing. This is terrible. It's like the oak suddenly saying one day, hey, we ought to have all these leaves around here. We ought to be just that simple little acorn. Now, a living tradition grows. But what it does is this. As it grows, say it grew from a seed, an acorn, keeps dropping off new acorns. You don't go back to the old acorn, you get a new one. That becomes a new seed for another tree. This is fine. Now, let me just warn you. Scholarly study of Buddhism is a magnum opus beyond belief.
13, 14. I'm just a weird guy, doing my own thing. I'm just a weird guy, living my own. That's what I do, doing weird shit. Doing all the weirdies. All the weirds. Still listening. 14, 15. I'm just a I'm just a
There are two collections of Buddhist canonical scriptures. One is in Pali, the other was originally in Sanskrit, but we don't have a complete collection of it in Sanskrit. We have these collections in Tibetan and Chinese, bigger than the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah.
So it's a formidable enterprise to get into the Buddhist scriptures, and what's more, most of them are unbelievably boring. They were written by monks with plenty of time to pass on wet afternoons during the monsoon. And they repeat, and they elaborate, and they are full of kind of preparatory. You know how the silly trick in radio they have of giving a fanfare to introduce the program. So in the same way, these scriptures have fanfares in which all Buddhas are introduced, and the beings, and they're all described, and where they were assembled, and how many of them there were, and where they were sitting, and what kind of vows they made, and all this jazz. Finally, a few pearls of wisdom are dropped by the Buddha, or else they sometimes go on for pages and pages of actually very, very subtle and very profound discourse. It's not dull if you have a kind of thing. But I warn you, don't try too hard to read the Buddhist books. It's all right to read the Dhammapada, sayings of the Buddha. It's all right to read the Diamond Sutra. It's all right even to read the Surangama Sutra or the Bhagavattara, Paramita, and all those things. You're in deep water. So you see, from time to time, Buddhists get tired of the scriptures. Actually, they keep them in a revolving bookcase in some monasteries. About so high, so wide, revolved. And instead of reading all this stuff, you're supposed to be able to acquire as much merit as you would from reading it all by twirling the around. In Zen monasteries, they have an annual ceremony for reading. It's like an accordion. In other words, the pages are connected to each other zigzag. And then they have board on the back and the front, so that you can pick one up and go like that, like a slinky moves. And so each monk is assigned a pile of the volumes. This happens once a year. And they all chant sections of scripture. But very often each monk chants a different one. And while they're doing this, they pick up a volume and go click, and put it down on the other side. Pick up a different one. And this is the annual reading of the scripture.
looking up.
There's a wonderful picture of this being done in Suzuki's book. So you see, Buddhists are funny about scriptures. They don't treat them the way it's treated. They respect them. They occasionally read them. But they feel that the written word, is purely instant. It is not the point. And they have to be very serious.
I'll do that thing. Come back.
Zhuangzi, Taoist sage, once said, just as a dog is not considered a good dog just being a good barker, man is not considered a good man just being a good talker. So we have to watch out for the traps of words. The next thing that comes up, the second of the Noble Truths, is about the cause of suffering. And this in Sanskrit is called Trishna. Trishna is related to our word thirst. It's very often translated desire. That will do. Better perhaps is craving, clinging, grasping, or even, to use our modern psychological word, blocking. When, for example, somebody is blocked and dithers, hesitates, and doesn't know what to do, he is, in the strictest Buddhist sense, attached. He's stuck. But a Buddha can't be stuck. He cannot be phased.
Okay, I'm back. Cool. Cool. What did I do there?
I was like, you mother truckers. I am fun. I promise.
I'll just get a fun with you. I did manage to get sometimes, and also managed to get all my down to 11
It always flows, just as water always flows, even if The river just keeps on getting higher and higher and higher until it flows over the dam. It's unstoppable. Now, Buddha said that
At least 3 times with
dukkha comes from Krishna. You all suffer because you think the world. You don't recognize that the world is anitya.
I think I'm going for like another half hour or so. Probably in this right around 2:30. If you want to chat, let's chat. I'll read the comments.
So then, try, if you can, not to grasp. Well, do you see that that immediately poses a problem? Because the student who has started off this dialogue with the Buddha then makes various efforts to give up desire. Upon which he very rapidly discovers he is desiring not to desire. And he takes that back to the teacher, who says, well, well, well. He said, of course, you are desiring not to desire. That's, of course, excessive. All I want you to do is to give up desiring as much as you can. Don't want to go beyond the point of which you came. And for this reason, Buddhism is called the middle way.
Supposed to do that thing.
Not only is it the middle way between the extremes of ascetic disciplines and pleasure seeking, but it's also the middle way in a very subtle sense. Yes, don't desire,
Oh shit. No.
give up more desire than you can. And if you find that a problem, don't desire to be successful in giving up more desire than you can. You see what's happening? At every time he's returned to the middle way, he is moved out of an extreme situation. Now then, we'll go on. We'll cut out what happens in the pursuit of that method until a little later. The next truth in the list is concerned with the nature of release from dukkha. And so number 3 is nirvana. Nirvana is the goal of Buddhism. It's the state of liberation corresponding to what the Hindus call moksha. The word means blow out. Ni, and it comes from the root ni vritti. Now, some people think that what it means is blowing out the flame of desire. I don't believe this. I believe that it means breathe out rather than blow out. Because if you try to hold your breath, and in Indian thought, prana, breath, is the life principle. If you try to hold on to life, you lose it. You can't hold your breath and stay alive. It becomes extremely uncomfortable to hold on to your breath. And so in exactly the same way, it becomes extremely uncomfortable to spend all your time holding on to life. What the devil is the point of surviving, going on living, when it's a drag? See, that's what people do. They spend enormous efforts on maintaining a certain standard of living, which is a great deal of trouble. You know, you get a nice house in the suburbs, and the first thing you do is you plant lawn. You've got to get out and mow the town. And you buy expensive this, that, and soon you're all involved in mortgages. enjoy. You sit at your desk looking at all the books, filling out this, that, and the other, and paying bills and answering letters. What a lot of rot. But you see, that is on to life. So, translated into colloquial American, nirvana is because if you let your breath go, it'll come back. So, nirvana is not annihilation. It's not disappearance into a sort of undifferentiated void. Nirvana is a state of being let go. It is a state of consciousness and a state of being here and now in this life. So then, let me connect this with the problem of birth and death, which puzzles people enormously, of course. Because in order to understand what the self is, you have to remember that it doesn't need to remember it. Just like you don't need to know how you work your thyroid gland. So then, when you die, you're not going to have to put up with everlasting non-existence, because that's not an experience. A lot of people are afraid that when they die, they're going to be locked up in a dark room forever and sort of undergo that. But one of the most interesting things in the world, this is a yoga, this is a way of realization. I imagine what it will be like to go to sleep and never wake up. Think about it. Children. One of the great wonders of life. What will it be like to go to sleep and never wake up? And if you think long enough about that, something will happen. You will find out, among other things, that it'll pose the next question to you. What was it like to wake up after having never gone to sleep? That was when you were born. You see, you can't have an experience of nothing. Nature abhors a vacuum. So after you're dead, the only thing that can happen is the same experience, or the same sort of experience as when you were born. In other words, we all know very well that after people die, other people are born. And they're all you. Only you can only experience it one at a time. wheresoever beings exist throughout all galaxies, it doesn't make any difference. You are all of them. And when they come into being, that's you coming into being. You know that very well. Only you don't have to remember the past. In the same way, you don't have to think about how you work your thyroid gland.
973. What's up, Tim? 1178 average. Sweet.
Whatever else it is in your organism. You don't have to know how to shine the sun. You just do it. Like you breathe. Doesn't it really astonish you that you are this fantastically complex thing? And that you're doing all of this and you never had any education in how to do it? Never learned, but you're this miracle? Well, the point is that from a strictly physical, scientific standpoint, this organism is a continuous energy with everything else that's going on. And if I am my foot, I am the sun. Only we've got this little partial view. We've got the idea that no, I'm just something in this body. The ego. That's a joke.
$9.98. $11.23 average to end it off.
The ego is nothing other than the focus of conscious attention. It's like a radar on a ship. The radar on a ship is a troubleshooter. Is there anything in the way? And conscious attention is a design function of the